Welcome to Wake Up with Marci, a deep dive into self-discovery. I'm your host, Marci Hopkins, and this is the space where we get real about life, transformation, and finding our true selves. Hello, and welcome to Wake Up with Marci, where we take a deep dive into self-discovery. I'm your host, Marci Hopkins, and this is a space where we get real about life, transformation, and finding our true selves. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Dr. Sherrie Campbell, a licensed clinical psychologist, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and top 1% podcast host of Therapy Sessions, Cutting Toxic Family Ties. She is a powerful voice in the world of emotional wellness and self-liberation, and a nationally recognized expert on family estrangement and toxic relationships. Dr. Sherrie's mission is to help healthy individuals break free from harmful ties and reclaim their lives. And today, she's going to share her story, her healing journey, and how we can all learn to love ourselves without guilt, shame, or apologies. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, because it is time to dive in. Welcome, Dr. Sherrie.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, I'm so grateful to have you on and to be speaking about such a powerful subject. And I mean, there's so many of us out there that need to hear about this. So thank you for joining me.
You bet. I'm excited.
Yeah. So you have built your work around breaking toxic families, but it all started with your own journey. Can you take
Yes.
us back to where it began, your first experience in therapy, and what happened when you
Yeah.
began to open up emotionally?
So I was scapegoated from birth. I was just not the favored child. And I also later in my life was diagnosed ADHD. And I think that between my mother hating women, the 9 marriages between my parents,
Mm,
and all of that shift and change, and I had ADHD, I was a very easy person to scapegoat. And not like and mock and criticize. And when ultimately, I think that the ADHD gave me a superpower of sensitivity where I was speaking truth and it was considered drama, overreacting, all the things. Um, and I think just all the transitions, all the divorces, the marriages, all the different step parents, um, plus ADHD and not feeling important, feeling very lost, feeling very unloved, unwanted, unliked. It ended up sending me into therapy at 16. And then I have been in and out of therapy my whole life. I've been in the last 10 years because I can only take, my own patients as far as I grow myself. But I
sure.
am the first expert to ever write about going no contact with family and to share my story on it. So I ended up starting a little bit of a movement when there was no intent to start a movement. But the amount of people that have changed their lives and broken the cycle has been pretty powerful. So I had no expectation of my work to do anything but get me stoned off planet Earth by by people who don't want to talk about the uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it is hard to talk about. And that takes me to your TEDx. I mean, you go right in talking exactly about this very topic. So was that something that you had a lot of fear around, and how were people reacting to that? I mean, you're talking about separating from family and how this whole idea where we just forgive, right, and we stay with our family and
Mhm.
we do what's right.
Mhm.
What did you find when you started speaking your truth around that?
So you're so nervous up there that I actually went blank, and I can see it when I watch it because it's me and I know what. In my mind I was doing cards and I didn't even miss a card. I just got myself a little overwhelmed and lost because what the speaker sees is a clock running down time
Mhm.
and blackness. You can't really see the audience, but I could hear them.
Yeah.
And they actually, in the recording that you see on YouTube, they really picked my voice up and lowered the volume of the audience because the audience was so loud. when I
Mhm.
was speaking. I was blown away. I had to pause actually for a minute and let them clap. And then many people stood for my talk after as well. And I know that I was the only speaker where that happened. And I
Yeah.
was hoping to get like 1,000 views to it, maybe 2,000, just because the average TED Talk gets about 350,000 or 350 views.
Mhm.
And I'm well over 300,000 now. So the theme of my TED Talk was disrupt. And it was the last application that I sent out that did not get rejected. So it was just really sort of a miracle situation. I mean, 150,000 people applied and they chose 100 speakers.
Yeah.
So to be on that stage and to have the theme be disrupt, I am a disruptor. I
Yeah.
do break against status quo. I do
Right.
not believe that children cause bad parents.
Yeah.
I do not believe that we should be told never to leave, to have all these microaggressions making us feel guilty. Because when a parent comes off a child, it's tough love and it's accepted. If
Mhm.
you're in a horrible romantic relationship, friendship, or work relationship, everyone tells you to leave, leave, leave. Don't talk to them again. Go no contact. But a child is somehow still not allowed to do that to their parents, even when their parents have been their greatest heartbreak, their first heartbreak, and their worst abusers. It doesn't make sense to me.
I agree 100%. I mean, I went through so much trauma growing up, and I did the hard love thing with my mother for a while. She was an alcoholic. She kept me in a
Mhm.
home where I was being sexually abused,
Mm.
and she knew that things were happening, but she never left. And
Mhm.
I just held on to this hope that somehow she would get better and we would have that relationship that I always
Mhm.
desired. And then
Mhm.
if I couldn't have it, maybe my children as their nanny would, have it. But it never happened, and she died from her addiction, and I ended up forgiving her. But it destroyed me in many ways. And I've gone on a long path myself of healing.
Mhm.
So I love the work that you're doing, and you are allowing others
Mhm.
to know it's okay and start that. But for you, like, how did this process start for you? Like, where did you start recognizing, like, you needed to make some changes, that self exploration, and then finding the love for yourself, and then your messaging?
Mhm. It took me 45 years to
Hmm.
figure all that out. I auditioned to be loved, wanted, and accepted for those 45 years. The older I got, the more identified I got, the further away from them I moved my body. I moved states, the more clear I became. But there isn't a child out there that wants to do this. I mean, I tried to have any type of mustard seed of a relationship that didn't include abuse. So I tried, low contact. I tried cordial contact, and any amount of contact just was feeding the vein of the abuse into my life. But when I
Yeah.
had my own daughter, and I really realized how cruel my abuse really was,
Yeah.
and the majority of mine was emotional. My dad definitely physically abused me on a couple of occasions, which was enough. But just to feel like you're just unwanted, I'd get looks like she's in the room. It was a very low effort, high conflict dynamic. Money and finances were there. It's not like I didn't get anything, but I didn't get nurtured. I didn't have a consistent presence. They were both so narcissistic, getting married every 2 minutes to someone new, men and women in between. I was just in dangerous, dumb situations. I was thrown into the middle of an affair. It just was sick. All the while I'm hated, right? So I was never heard, and I was shouting the truth, and I was just considered dramatic and crazy and all the things. And I had a sibling who was like the golden child, so I saw the differential treatment, and there was a calculated indifference directed toward me. And it was clear they wanted me to know that I wasn't as loved as someone else. And it was clear.
Mm.
Um, But I think that the human being has a bandwidth to which the what ended the dynamic between us. I mean, I was always getting cut off. They would always cut me off, and that was always okay. So, but I didn't mend the fence this time. So now I'm the villain and the deserter, right? Because I didn't go back into their pattern. But I just couldn't anymore. And it was almost like I felt it physically rather than feeling it emotionally. I just knew that something had broken and it was done. And I
Yeah.
was relieved. I was absolutely relieved
Well,
that
the
I
way
knew I was never going back.
Yeah. How long ago was that?
9 years.
9 years. So let's talk about cutting those ties, right? So
Mhm.
for people out there that may feel like it's cruel to
Mhm.
do that, but you say it's healthier for you.
I think it's the most loving thing I can do for them as well. I don't need to give them another person to practice their abuse on to get better at it.
Yeah.
And I think that genuinely my mother is relieved because she doesn't have to face the truth every day with me in her face now, in a verbal and active way. But the relationship is active. Those are
Mhm.
still my parents. My father has since passed, but I've changed the format. It's no longer verbal and dynamic. It is silent and inactive.
Yeah.
But she's still my mom. I don't wish her any harm. I can't stand her. But I don't hate her. I don't like her and I don't respect her. And I
Right.
just do not choose to have people in my life that I don't like or respect. She has no other intention other than to make my life as hard as it can be. When I'm down, there would have been moments where she wanted to be my hero, but there are other moments she would just kick me as hard as she could when I was down. So it all just depend on her. It's not mean. I think it's quite loving. I think if you genuinely love somebody, then the highest form of love would have boundaries and discipline.
Yeah.
So every time I've set boundaries on her, I've given her an opportunity to stay in my life.
Mhm.
So people look at boundaries as you're kicking someone out. I look at boundaries as you're giving them an opportunity to stay in. Like if you do this and it hurts my feelings and I let you know, I would certainly not do that again if I was somebody and I was hurting their feelings.
100%.
I would not do that again because I would cherish the relationship and want to be in their life. So my mom doesn't want to be in my life, and she's given me 45 years and my father of knowing that and my sibling. And so why would I hold them to that? If they want to be abusers, then I am in essence respecting their boundaries to be that type of person.
Right. And I mean, that is the most loving thing you can do is to create that
100%.
healthy boundary for yourself. So let's talk about someone out there that does want to pull away,
Mhm.
right? They're in a very toxic relationship with someone in their family. But then that guilt, right? That overwhelming guilt is there. What would you say to them?
What but why are you feeling guilty? Right? We should feel guilt when we do something wrong.
But we feel like that's wrong.
But why is it wrong? That's
It's
what you have to ask yourself. Why is it wrong? Because you share DNA?
because society says, and you say this too in your TEDx talk, right? Society says we're supposed to stay, make it right in some way. They're our parents, they gave birth to us. And
My TED Talk also says DNA should equal do not abuse.
I love that too. That is a great line.
Why would you abuse your own blood? I thought that's who you were supposed to love the most. See, I look at
Mhm.
it as now says who?
Yeah.
Says society? Well,
Mhm.
who's society? Sheep? Says
Yeah.
who? Why
Mhm.
should I be abused because this woman brought me in? Listen, our parents should be guides, not gods.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Okay. And I also believe that I don't come from them, I came through them.
I love it. I love that. And it's so
I came
true.
through them to have my own life, right? Am I angry? Yes, I'm angry because a child was abused. Why aren't you angry?
Mhm.
Why isn't society more angry that children are being abused by their parents? Yeah, I'm angry.
Yeah. Amen. Have you been able to forgive not what she's done or your parents have done, but to release that power that's had maybe over you for this
Yeah,
time?
Forgiveness happens when someone shows remorse. When someone is genuinely sorry, then I think forgiveness is really applicable. But the math doesn't math for me. There's no remorse, there's no apology. And so I had to go deeper than forgiveness.
Yeah.
Forgiveness kept me abused for 45 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I've forgiven many people in my life and I've grown. And I've also not forgiven many people and I've grown just as equally. You know, society wants us to hang our hats on all these good behaviors, and forgiveness is another a topic that has so much cognitive dissonance around it. And it's unfortunate there's not a different definition that could differentiate maybe a religious forgiveness from a psychological forgiveness, but maybe it's semantics for people. But I accept her for exactly who she is. And I don't need her or my dad or my brother to be different. I might want them to be different sometimes.
Right.
But acceptance was far deeper and harder for me than forgiveness because it had to be a very radical acceptance. Forgiveness is mostly about reconciliation for people. That's the point of it usually. You can forgive and not reconcile. But I'm not holding anything of bitterness toward them. I have no interest in.
Well, then it has no power over you.
It just doesn't have any power. The word forgiveness doesn't math because there's no remorse and there's no repentance and there's no apology. So I can't apply that to this topic. And I think that it's fine if people forgive, but I think trying to force someone to forgive is where the problem is.
Oh yeah, you can't force anyone to do it.
And
Absolutely.
society will then say, well, now you're really a bad person. Well, says who though?
No, yeah.
I'm allowing these people to be the chosen people they want to be in this world. And I'm now not asking them to be different than the abuser they want to be. I'm setting them completely free to be who they are. And in doing that, I set myself free to go live my own wonderful, beautiful, happy life that I can create without them.
As long as, like, I know that there's a lot of people out there though, like you do not allow them to have power over you, but a lot of people stay so stuck in the story, right? And they keep reliving it and they stay in that anger and pain.
And that's a choice.
Yeah, so it is a choice.
We can be so identified with our story that we never move past the sad story. And I see it in my office every day.
Yeah, so what can they do?
Well, I tell them they have to make the choice. You know, we're always here evolving as a human spirit. We can't hang on to the old form. You know, when pressure's coming, people fear that dark wants to come in. I look at it as the pressure is the light trying to break through your darkness, your attachment to your old story. You know, I'm a warrior. I mean, I really love every aspect of my story. And anytime that there's a major transformation coming, I feel a tremendous pressure. I'm usually going through a dark season. And then I break through it and I'm a new form of me.
Yeah.
You know, developmental psychology would also show that just on a scale. In one of my books, I go over Erickson's lifespan development. We're always becoming a new form. But if you become so identified with your story of being a victim, then you have the potential to become just as toxic as the people who you're getting rid of.
Well, 100%. And you say that's that generational cycle where we just keep on, moving from one generation to another, the next, doing the same thing. How can we help ourselves to not do that? I know you say it's a choice. And I believe you because I had to make a choice. I had to surrender and stop what I was doing to create the change.
So I think you have to work very, very hard and you have to be diligent in that type of self-examination work every day. I think you should read. I think knowledge is power. It's the first thing that brings you understanding. I think you should listen to podcasts. I think you should commit to weekly therapy. And you have to be really willing to look at yourself and to redefine your life. I am really happy. I live a really happy life. My life has changed so beautifully since I got rid of taking the poison. And I've written 7 books. I have a huge podcast, a beautiful following. you're my third show today that I'm on. And this was not the dream I had for myself. I
Mhm.
would have preferred to have had a really loving, supportive family and have had been able to live in that type of life. And unfortunately, I didn't, but I chose to turn my predators into a purpose. You have to find purpose to your pain. If you
Mhm.
sit in your pain, your sad story about yourself is going to grow. I was victimized, but I'm not a victim.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I see what I did for a long time, and it is not a nice place to be.
no, and
No.
I think it's okay to go through that phase. I mean,
Mhm.
I was going through that phase for 45 years. I kept going back thinking, well, maybe if I achieve this, maybe if I do that, maybe if I have no self and I just parrot, maybe
Yeah.
then I'll fit. I mean, I tried it all.
Yeah.
So, and I'm proud of myself that I tried everything because I don't think I sat in my victim story maybe as long because I mean, I was lucky. They cut me off. I didn't have to cut them off.
Mhm.
I was lucky. I think I had it in some way in other ways that other people didn't. Like I had interviewed Nadine Macaluso, who's the ex-wife of the Wolf of Wall Street on my show. And she
Mhm.
said to me too, she's like, Sherrie, I was lucky. My husband got taken to prison.
Yeah.
Other
Yeah.
women don't. They stay in that cycle. But with things that I did is I moved my body away. I got my body out of that energy and I
Mm.
moved states. And so that proximity and that distance um, initially made it seem like the relationship could work, right? But then any vacation or any time that I spent time within 24 hours, I was already done and wanting to go home, and I was miserable. So I
That
made that less, right? And I just kept making it less and less and less. Um, and they didn't have as much control, and then the abuse got worse. And I was being abused over stuff that just doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And I was in
They were
therapy.
feeding off of that.
Yeah, I had therapy and it was enough.
Mhm.
So I feel very confident that there is nothing I could have done to have been a better child or daughter or tried harder to be loved or love them.
Nor
Um,
Yeah, and I don't believe that you should be having to try that hard to be loved by your.
Children should not be earning love. We should be
Yeah,
resting in it. But that is
unconditional.
not how I grew up. It
So
had to be earned.
I no, and I get that. I
Yeah.
completely get that. I was abandoned by both of my parents,
Yeah, same.
and I tried to do everything I could to
Yeah.
get that love, to feel loved. And let me tell you, when I didn't get it the way that I needed it or deserved it, and then I took it into my adulthood and my relationships and seeking validation in all different types of ways because I didn't know how to validate myself.
Mhm.
And then it was when I began to stop looking outside of myself,
Mhm.
went within. Like
Mhm.
that is when I rediscovered myself. I was like, wow,
In
I'm
a way, I was kind of lucky because I was always sent to my room.
mm,
Chronically, your emotional go away. I was always sent somewhere.
yeah.
And so I really did learn to be alone. And I had superheroes. Like I loved Annie. I was like
Mhm.
obsessed with Orphan Annie. I was
Yeah.
obsessed with Pippi Longstocking. And I was very imaginative and very creative as a child. And I learned to find a lot of comfort in my room with
Yeah.
my stuffed animals. I
Mhm.
never liked dolls because I think I wasn't a loved kid. So I don't know that I knew how to do that. But I really do feel like getting into therapy and really doing deeper work and being really committed to yourself in the ways that no one was committed to you. And your story comes out. And I think that you'll see, like, I was the scapegoat, but I was the escape goat, GOAT. Like, I always had the truth. And
Yeah.
so I ended up really, if you have the truth, you're the greatest of all time. Right.
Mhm.
So they tried to genuinely destroy me by intent,
Mhm.
and they didn't.
No. And
And
look at
and
you.
so
You're thriving today and you're helping others to thrive too. Well, one of the things I want to talk about now is about being vulnerable. And I think that that's very difficult. Like for me, myself, And I'll ask you if you do this. Like I built so many walls up around my heart and myself to try to protect myself, thinking that that was making me stronger. But in reality, it was only pushing people away and people that actually really love me. So,
Mhm.
what do you believe about vulnerability and how necessary it needs to be? And what does it do for us when we become vulnerable?
Yeah, I was always vulnerable. I was
Mm,
just an aching, bleeding, highly sensitive kid heart, and I didn't really know how to put guards up. And then I became very needy and attracted narcissistic men. And so I didn't do the guard my heart thing very well, um, until the pain was just so bad that I recognized that a certain amount of guardedness for me is actually kind of healthy. I was so unguarded that I had to really learn to protect myself and guard myself. But I think that being vulnerable, you've got to be that around someone that you trust. And being in a therapy relationship gave me that consistent presence I'd never had. Um, and I don't think that everybody needs to know everything about me either. I mean, I've been with my boyfriend for 9 years. There's still things he's learning about me.
yeah.
Um, I've done all the major trauma, and now there'll be other memories of other slight traumas or things I'd forgotten about that will ring or hit me hard, or how did I not remember that, or and
Mm,
he doesn't have near the trauma that I do. So there was kind of a gap between us where we've worked really hard, and he's grown a lot. So I think vulnerability is really important for those people that you really want to have be your family. But I also think it's still okay to be self-protective as long as it is not interfering in intimacy or blocking intimacy where you're not allowing anyone in. But I would get to know people at a 0% trust, and they should earn your trust. And that is a way to show yourself in baby steps that you can be more vulnerable with somebody as
yeah,
time goes on.
yeah, I love that. And you say so often about therapy and the importance of therapy. And why is that so important?
For me, and I can only speak for myself and probably my patients, but I never had a consistent presence. There's not a miracle in any session of mine anymore. I've been going to her for 10 years, and she's going to retire next year. And I'm ready for that. And we talk about that. But it's the consistent presence over time that has been the greatest miracle of therapy for me. She's seen all my sides, all my colors. We've worked through all of my things. We've done all the personality testing. It's been such a fun, dynamic relationship. And she tells me that she feels very maternal toward me, which I love and I need.
Mhm.
And that consistent presence has been very stabilizing for me. And I feel seen and I feel understood. And
Mhm.
I feel better, smarter, more confident, more solid in my story because I've had this woman across from me for 10 years
Mm,
saying, I see you, I get it, I see you. Right.
yeah,
So that's the miracle of therapy. It's not that you're going to get a miracle in every session, it's just not possible, but it's so well worth it. I mean, and I'll probably wait a couple of years, and if I feel the need, I'll go back in.
yeah.
If I feel like I need that steady presence, but she has really taught me how to be my own steady presence now. And so I feel like even the terminating of that relationship is going to be really amazing.
Yeah. I
And
think it's so important to know that one, first of all, you're not alone out there
yes,
and you
yeah.
shouldn't do this alone. You
I
shouldn't.
think too, it is hard to find someone who understands and can support morally, because some people think that, cutting off an abuser when that abuser is your mother or father is still immoral somehow.
Mhm.
I have a lot of people that have been very traumatized by therapists who are like, I know, but it's your mom. And my first book's title is, But It's Your Family, because I heard it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what?
Yeah.
Listen, if people can be abusers, okay, and parents are people, then that would only make sense to me that parents can also be abusers. And honestly, I didn't make them that way. They were that way long before I showed up. They
Yeah.
continued that generational trauma as they raised me. And now between society and family, you get guilted and controlled long past the time that you want to have the relationship. So I don't wish this on anyone. This isn't the choice I ever would have ever made. I would have settled for a mustard seed. But I did 4.5 decades of being abused. I think it's good time the last 10 years that I have some freedom, right?
I agree. I agree. And I would just say that, you know, there's so much help out there. And Dr. Sherrie, you're helping so many out there to know that this is okay, and
Mhm.
abuse is not right. And there
You
is
will
life
feel
out
abused in your body.
there. Yeah.
I knew in my body my entire life something was wrong, and I kept making it me
Yeah.
because parents can't be wrong. That's how society views it, and that's just not right.
Mm.
Watch Law and Crime, and you tell me that parents can't be wrong. Okay,
Mm.
so
Mm.
they can be wrong. They often
Mhm.
are wrong. What I think is interesting is that when there's a cutoff, people are more concerned about what the abuser needs, what's resources they can have, how they're hurting, what you've done to them, and they're not the victim. I think that needs to shift. I think we should worry about what abuse victim needs, what
Yeah.
resources they need, and how are they going to go through life without the two strong pillars that brought them here, that they
Yeah.
deserve to have. We're not just lopping off limbs. This isn't cancel culture, right? This
Right.
is saving your own life or not. That's what
Mm.
this is.
And on that note, I think that we will wrap this up, but just tell us really quickly. I know you said you have 7 books.
Yes.
You also have the podcast Sherrie sessions, which, let me tell you, like, if you ever need someone to share a story, I'd be grateful to be on your podcast
Of
too.
course.
But
Yes.
how can people like connect with you more deeply? Like, how can they get to you?
I would say my social media, Dr.Sherrie on TikTok and Instagram, and then Sherrie Campbell, PhD on Facebook. But I've one side of my podcast is a $5 subscription. And I do that because I don't want any of my information to be able to be used against my listeners. And if someone doesn't want to pay $5 for really top-notch information, then it's not for them. And then there's a public side where I interview guests, and that's free. But my podcast, I do as much as I can on that show that I do in my office to help people. And
Amazing.
people love it. And it's private,
Yeah.
which I think sometimes we need because we face a lot of attacks from people that don't understand.
100%. Yeah.
And my website, drsherriecampbell.com, you can find all of my stuff there.
All of your books, everything, right?
Yes.
So I just want to say thank you so much for
You
being
bet, Marci.
vulnerable and honest and sharing so much insight. And to everyone out there, if you're struggling with toxic relationships, if you feel torn between guilt and peace, or if you're just starting to explore what self-love means, I hope that this episode and Dr. Sherrie gave you permission to choose yourself. And you are not alone. You are not broken. And you are absolutely worthy of peace and freedom. So please be sure to check out Dr. Sherrie Campbell's information. Thank you for watching on YouTube, listening on your favorite podcast platform. And until next time, stay true, stay kind to yourself, and keep waking up to all of the possibilities in your life. All right, guys, see you next time.